Well, if we're talking United States, there are currently almost 7 million people living with Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
It is the sixth leading cause of death among the elderly,
Hmm.
but it is a global tsunami on its way. In the UK, Finland, and the Netherlands,
Mhm.
it's the number one cause of death.
Welcome to the Root Cause Revolution, where we go beyond band-aids and ask what's really driving your symptoms. I'm Dr. Stefan Neff, a former anesthetist turned functional medicine doctor, and this show is all about getting curious, digging deeper, and reclaiming your health from the ground up. Just so you know, nothing you hear on this podcast is medical advice. It's here to inform and inspire. Please talk to your doctor or a trusted functional medicine practitioner before making any changes to your health.
Today I've got Lisa Skinner with me, and we both have a passion for Alzheimer's. Now, that is probably the weirdest introduction that I can possibly do. Who in this world has a passion for a neurodegenerative disease that anyone else just wants to shy away and melt into the background? Here are two people, two very like-minded people, who have developed insights into a disease that, or I shall say, a disease spectrum that is so challenging and that is getting worse and worse. If you look at the statistics over the last 10 years, 20, 30 years, they speak volumes. Unfortunately, our lifestyle and so many other reasons have caused an avalanche of dementia victims. And it is so brutal because there is so much we can do, both to prevent dementia, reverse early dementia, and manage the symptoms effectively when it comes to later down the life. Lisa, I'm so grateful that you're today here as a guest on my show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Stefan. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm actually honored to be on your show today. And I just can't wait for us to dive into this discussion because it's going
So,
to be powerful.
I mean, Lisa, you have lived and breathed this path for 30 years professionally. You are a dementia care practitioner. You're certified to run and to implement actually programs for dementia care. There are so many professional sides to you who have a tremendous experience with that disease. But often enough, our interest is not something that you read in a book one day and think, that's interesting. I might get into that field. No one said that ever. There's always reasons for that. When was your first experience with dementia?
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I can never remember a time when I was growing up that I said, oh, I know what I want to do with my life. When I grow up, I'm going to help families, uh, get through this devastating situation. My very first experience was 50 years ago
Hmm.
when my grandmother started telling me about these birds that lived in her mattress. They would come out at night and peck at her face.
Oh.
She pointed to her walls. I was over at her house visiting, and I was there by myself with my grandmother. She was pointing to the walls and she was saying, don't you see them? Don't you see them? And I'm like, what am I supposed to be seeing?
Hmm.
She said, oh, those rats. They're running all over my house. They're invading my home. This
Hmm.
is in addition to the birds living in her mattress that peck
Hmm.
at her face. And then the last thing she shared with me was that these men that she was referring to were constantly breaking into her home. They were stealing her jewelry, her personal possessions, and she
Oh.
was convinced that eventually they were going to do away with her and just take over her life. And as a teenager, I'm sitting there absolutely dumbfounded,
Hmm.
completely floored, had no idea how to
Hmm.
react to these just far-fetched stories that I've never heard before, let alone from my sweet grandmother. And I did not even know that there was anything wrong with her.
Hmm.
So the thing that was really unique that happened And it's the only reason why I ended up responding to these crazy stories that I was hearing in the way that I did, because I didn't know what to say. I am from the generation that was taught you never argue or contradict your elders. I had utmost respect for my grandma. I adored my grandma. So what I did was I said, "Oh, grandma, this must be terribly frightening for you, especially having these birds come out at night and peck at your face."
Mhm.
I said, "We need to do something about this." I said, "Let's go in your room and show me how they're getting in and out of the mattress. So maybe we can figure out a way to get rid of them so you don't have to always be terrified. You
Oh,
can get a good night's
beautiful.
sleep again." So we did, and I threw her covers off. I'm looking everywhere, on top of the mattress, underneath the mattress. I'm not seeing any holes in the mattress or any evidence of birds. So I said to her, being very careful not to contradict her
Mm.
and make her feel bad, I said, "So, Grandma, help me here. I'm really not seeing where they're able to get in and out of your mattress. So, can you show me?" And she said, looks at me straight in the eye, and she says, "Oh, Lisa, they're there. They're just very, very clever." And as it turns out, it was an absolutely brilliant um, response to this false belief that she was having, a delusion that I was witnessing. And I learned later on, when I ended up going into this career professionally, that people who live with dementia, and they do have these hallucinations, like her rats were a hallucination, the delusion or false belief about the birds living in her mattress, that they do become masterful at explaining away what their belief is. So I went home and I told my mother everything that my grandmother shared with me. And I said, "Why in the world didn't you tell me so I would have been prepared?" I said, "I was caught off guard like you wouldn't believe, and I had no idea what to think of the craziest stories I've ever heard." And she looks at me and she says, "Your grandmother's been diagnosed with senile dementia," which is what synonymous with Alzheimer's disease 50 years ago. And she said, "And we're just not going to talk about it again. I'm dealing with it." And that was such
Fuck.
a typical response 50 years ago, and the way that people really reacted to an Alzheimer's dementia diagnosis, because there's just so many stigmas attached to it.
Mm.
People related it to, "Oh, you have a crazy person in your family."
Mm.
And that's not the case at all. I
Mm.
mean, this is a neurodegenerative disease that's progressive,
Mm.
and it is a brain disease. This is not mental illness. The
Mm.
two are completely different situations.
Mm.
So that was my first experience. It was I will never forget that day as long as I live. It has stayed with me 50 years to the day. And then I had 7 more family members follow in my grandmother's footsteps with living with one of the 200 brain diseases
Mm.
that we know of that cause similar symptoms that we call dementia.
Mm. Wow. Wow. What a beautiful
So
story.
I've lived this life.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful how you describe it because it puts that human touch to it. These are not crazy people. And whatever kind of cliche you have got, and we all have those cliches. We all have got these kind of programs running in our background where we try to protect ourselves. So if you look at stress, one of the biggest stressors is the fear of the unknown. So unknown we have nowadays recognized is not great because your body shies away, your mind, your spirit shies away from the unknown. So therefore, suddenly someone is in your family who you love, who you know as a certain person, who suddenly gets these anger outbursts or talks gibberish as far as you're concerned. Confabulation in the words it basically means you're making up stories in order to fit what this person truly perceives to be the truth, because they can't figure out, hang on,
Correct.
where is my watch gone? I know I've put it last night there. Well, last night that you remember was probably 20 years ago where you put it there. And in reality, it's probably somewhere in the freezer or God knows where you have put it. And of course, you try
Very correct.
to make up some story that fits with that. So I think
That's right.
the first thing for us, I think, to understand is that we are still talking in pictures, in cliches, in prejudices, and we need to be to get rid of them. We need to become curious about what is happening in front of us, and we need to become curious with what is happening within our head. Because why are you getting triggered? Because maybe, oh, that reminds you
Well,
of your own grandma, etc. So there are so many things there. It's a common problem. How common?
it is.
Which figures do you quote for neurodegenerative diseases when we now hone it a bit more in towards dementia in its own right?
Well, if we're talking United States, there are currently almost 7 million people living with Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
It is the sixth leading cause of death among the elderly, but it is a global tsunami on its way. In the UK, Finland, and the Netherlands, it's the number one cause of death. And the World Health Organization and all the Alzheimer's organizations are telling us that if we don't find a cure or treatment by the year 2050, those numbers, the 7 million in the US and the millions and millions of people throughout the world who live with it today, that number is expected to triple just in the next 25 years. And we are not prepared for the tsunami that's on its way.
Now, you know
Unless,
what? I call
some miracle happens.
I call BS here. And BS, in my words, means bad science, not bullshit. So bad science, because how many people actually are diagnosed appropriately with dementia? Most people run for years prior to actually getting a diagnosis. So therefore, if we were to say 7 million, well, these are the 7 million that are probably in the further end stages, that where it's so blatantly obvious.
That's right.
Whilst the real figure, I would dare to say, is probably factor 10 of the early stages of Alzheimer's. And when we talk about dementia, we are throwing Alzheimer's and dementia and Lewy bodies and you name it, all vascular dementia. That's all a bit confusing. Maybe let's break it down a bit, isn't it? There are 200 different diseases or neurodegenerative things that we know about. I love the way you put it, that someone actually realized that there's a cluster and that there's maybe something, how we can define it in a better way than rather, they are loopy. So if we look at the bigger things, it's good to realize that there are a number of things that can harm our brain that then cause the symptoms of us not showing up for ourselves the way we used to. If we look at that, the amount of cardiovascular disease is huge out there. So mini strokes, atherosclerotic changes in the brain. So you've got the vascular dementia, where basically you knock out parts of your brain here and there over a lifetime. And that's probably quite hard unless you address the underlying root cause, the cardiovascular system, and the reasons that you're having many strokes. There's probably not much you can do to massively reverse that trend. So that's where we really need to look at root causes. But that's about 40%. 60% is really the Alzheimer's. It's a disease that we still struggle to come to terms with because, once the genome was explored and we've got now the whole genome there, we think, yes, we got the genes. We can figure it out. If you just knock out that gene and that gene, it's going to be all fine. And we learned, again, BS, bad science. What do you think about genetic testing for everyone with regards to seeing if there's a predisposition for Alzheimer dementia in the case of ApoE4 It's a genetic marker that for a
Well,
while was put out there.
we actually do know that there's a genetic predisposition. That's one of the non-modifiable risk factors that
Mm.
we have that is we can't change it.
Mm.
We inherit that APOE4 gene from either our mother, our father, or both parents. So
Mm.
if it is passed down to us, we as an individual can potentially carry that one allele of that APOE4 gene, or we can carry two.
Mm.
Now, does that mean that you're going to develop Alzheimer's disease? Absolutely not. What
Woohoo!
it means,
Thank you. Thank you.
your risk is higher. So if you have two alleles of the APOE4 gene, you're at double risk of developing it later in life. Or if you carry one, you're at a higher risk than somebody who does not carry it. But it still does not put that nail in the coffin, because you can live the rest of your life completely Alzheimer's disease free, even if you're carrying one of those APOE4 genes.
Beautiful.
It just increases your risk of it. So that's something to be aware of. So maybe you can implement some of the other risk factors that we know of to help decrease your chances of developing it.
Lisa, I love you. This is just so beautifully said.
Oh.
No, honestly, it is. This is one of the banes of my life, because we have got this whole generation who has believed the kind of genetic hypes. If you have a DNA analyzing system, then of course you want to put all the marketing out there here, figure out your risk factors, etc. And there's so much emphasis being put on, oh my God, you have got X, Y, and Z in your genes. In reality, that is, I often compare it with the fact that you have got a pistol. Now, your genes are loading the magazine, but your lifestyle is pulling the trigger. Only because your magazine is loaded means absolutely nothing in many cases. There are some cases which is absolutely blatantly obvious. There is glass bone disease, or these very weird diseases where the baby comes out and basically dies because of one genetic damage. So there's this extreme of some diseases which are clearly genetically, you can't do anything about it. That is what is happening. And then there's a huge gray zone. And ApoE4 as one of the markers for dementia, I think falls perfectly in there. The more people we are testing, the more people we find where there are very healthy people who have no signs and symptoms, yet they are both alleles ApoE4 positive. So I think
Right.
we
That's
will,
very true.
isn't it? So therefore, it's so beautiful. But I agree with you. I do in my practice, I do recommend testing, because it puts a certain degree of urgency on there. If you think that your current American style diet, the standard American diet, abbreviated SAD, and your 1,000 steps a day, and you're sleeping, going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning after 8 Jack Daniels, if you think that that you can actually keep going like that and not develop brain problems, how about that? So brilliant. Genetics, we too agree 100%. Now, if we now were to look at what actually makes it more likely for you later on to develop signs and symptoms that might be consistent with Alzheimer's. What do you think? I mean, there have been a beautiful position statements and beautiful scientific summaries being done. But if you were to talk about it, what are sort of the risk factors that start maybe in early life, then the risk factors during our the time when we bloom as humans, and then risk factors later in life that you actually develop signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's?
Okay, so there are two classifications of risk factors. One of them we call the non-modifiable risk factors. There's four of them. We just talked about genetics. And then there's a huge list of what we call modifiable risk factors, because they're treatable, modifiable.
Mhm.
All right. So the 4 risk factors that we can't change, the number 1 is our age. The older we get, the higher our risk becomes of developing Alzheimer's disease. That typically shows up starting at about the age of 65, with the exception of what's called early onset Alzheimer's, a rarer type of Alzheimer's, which shows up before the age of 65. That's the difference. Then there's our gender. We know today that more women develop Alzheimer's disease than men. We cannot change our age. We're going to age chronologically, and that's going to move, keep moving forward. We can't change our gender. If you're a female over the age of 65, those are 2 risk factors now that are not in your favor. The third one is genetics, that APOE4 gene. You either inherit it or you don't. And then the last one is our ethnicity. We now know that there are certain people with certain ethnic backgrounds that are at a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease than others. Hispanics are higher risk. Asians are at a higher risk. Pacific Islanders that are a higher risk, and African Americans are at higher risk than some of the other ethnicities. And we can't change that. So there's 4 right there that we can't modify in our life. We are what we are. Then we have to factor in the modifiable. And you said it a little earlier. The number 1 modifiable risk factor to either increase our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease or minimizing is cardiovascular disease. You're just spot on that. But the difference is it's treatable. A lot of people who suffer from hypertension or high blood pressure are being treated by their physicians. And they're doing a lot of the right things. They're getting exercise. They've changed their diets to, a Mediterranean focused diet or a keto diet.
Absolutely.
And so what that does is negates that from just compounding the risk factors to increase your risk even more and more and more. And then there's several other medical conditions that increase a person's risk factor, but again, they're treatable. Diabetes is huge, huge risk factor for increasing a person's risk of developing Alzheimer's. Sleep apnea is huge, and we've only really realized that about in the last 60 years, but it's treatable with a CPAP machine. Hearing loss increases a person's risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, treatable with hearing aids. So all of these things, if these conditions apply to you, but you're under a doctor's care for them and they're being treated, then you are helping minimize that risk from all these things being kind of, stacked against you, if you will.
Absolutely.
And then there's the lifestyle choices. And these things, in addition to everything I've just gone over, have been shown to increase our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. You mentioned it earlier. This is huge. It's our diets. The worst foods that we can ingest are ultra processed foods. Then there's processed foods. Then there's the white stuff, or the simple carbohydrates, the white bread, the white flour, the white rice, the white potatoes. These are all simple carbohydrates that spike our sugar levels pretty quickly and increase our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And then there's been studies that have pretty much supported the regularity of getting exercise can reduce your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And then cognitive stimulation, keeping your brain active, keeping those, neurons firing up.
Absolutely.
These are all things that studies have given a direct correlation to not that you will develop Alzheimer's disease, but will increase your risk. So the
Absolutely.
bottom line, what Stefan and I are saying to you here is all these things that we've just brought to your attention,
Mm.
count them up and see how many apply to you as an individual.
Mm.
And the more things that you can do um, to negate those risk factors from
Mm.
basically piling up on you, and
Mm.
you know that
Mm.
that's kind of the bottom line, the lower your risk becomes. If you do nothing, we've identified all of these risk factors. If you do
Mm.
absolutely nothing, you don't make any changes, you're not getting your medical conditions treated,
Absolutely.
you're, you know, not making healthier diet choices,
Mm.
you're sitting in front of a television set all day long. These things are just going to
Yeah.
continue to increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease.
Mm.
And it's significant. It can help minimize your risk by up to 40% in some people. That's huge.
I would dare to say that the last figure is not correct. I think there's increasing body of evidence coming out which shows us that if we are absolutely aggressive in changing our lifestyles, not just tweaking a bit here, tweaking a bit there 6 months later, but actually do a systematic approach where we say, okay, what are your risk factors? Let's deal with them aggressively, and modify all the lifestyle factors, then it's virtually impossible not to get better in your whole metabolic health. Because what are the risk factors that you described? We are talking about cardiovascular disease, we talk about the diabetes, we talk about this metabolic chaos of systemic inflammation that affects our brain and every other organ. Well, that is fueled massively by gut problems, leaky gut, by environmental toxins that we haven't touched upon, but which are part and parcel of it. All the microplastics, all the mycotoxins, so mold disease. Do you really think that you living in a moldy house in New Orleans because your house was flooded during the last hurricane, that when there's black mold on the ceiling, do you really think that you have got a healthy brain? I don't think so. So these are just so many examples. And I think the studies and the Alzheimer's societies, the major societies, have done great work of putting big headings out there, yet they have not yet linked it really together. For example, if you say, well, the risk factor is Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, link it together. Systemic inflammation that is fueled by X, Y, and Z. So you've got, if you actually work now on the systemic inflammation and reduce the stop pouring fuel onto the fire, so to speak,
Yes.
and therefore reduce cardiovascular and the many other metabolic diseases that there are. If we now working on optimizing our hormones, our organ function, if we work on the autoimmune disease, that is separately fueling our poor health. The autoimmune disease that was caused by your body screaming out, stop throwing all that rubbish of food at me, stop, finally start living a life as you were meant to be. And we suddenly calm down the Hashimoto's or the whatever other autoimmune disease there is. Suddenly we see all that magically getting better. So this is not a quick
I
fix,
couldn't agree with you more.
isn't
I
it?
could not agree with you more.
Absolutely.
But
So
the
it's a,
challenge is,
yeah.
one of the challenges that I have observed in at least the last 30 years is when we're younger, the farthest thing from our mind is, why should I worry about what's going to happen to me in 30, 40, 50, 60 years? But trust us when we're telling you, if you pay attention to a lot of these things that we've talked about, lifestyle choices and, you know, staying as healthy as you can, the time goes by in a blink of an eye. I think we can both attest to that. And when you are at the age, starting, you know, the age group where these neurodegenerative diseases do start showing up,
Yeah.
you might at that time say to yourself, if it doesn't pick on you, I sure am glad I listened to Lisa and Stefan way back on Neff Inspiration, because it may have skipped over me because I
Yeah,
paid attention and did all
sure.
these things.
Exactly.
And I've been there. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't worried about what the heck was
Oh,
going to happen to me when I was
uh,
60, 70, 80
uh,
years old. But
uh.
I sure do now because it's creeping up on me.
There is so true. And there is look, there is one beautiful saying that so encapsulates what we both are talking about. The saying is very simple. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person has only one dream. And that says, I get goosebumps when I think about that, because suddenly our attention is being drawn to what is really important. And that's often so late in our life, after damage has already occurred and after already so many things have gone wrong in our lives. Some of them due to our choices, some of them due to choices that others made for us. Because if we
Yes.
were to look at the factors contributing to it, I loved it that there were four non changeable forces that were happening, causes that were happening for Alzheimer's. I would actually add in more there, because you can't do anything about the childhood in which you're growing up. And we know that adverse childhood experiences, trauma in children, has been linked with poorer mental function later in life and has been
Mhm.
linked with all the medical diseases. So I certainly would use adverse childhood experiences in
Well,
that group.
we saw that specifically with Native Americans
Oh, yeah.
and generational trauma that they have suffered
Thank you.
from those schools that they were forced to attend.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I mean, there's a perfect example of what you're saying.
Exactly.
Generational trauma,
Yeah. And
right?
for those of you out there who think, oh, that's just one of these other modern bullshit things, no, it is not. There
It's
are
real.
absolutely, and also trauma. When we say generational trauma, that has been handed down from previous generations in our genes.
Right.
That sounds
Oh, yes, in
BS.
our genes. Not
Absolutely,
just
and
psychologically, but in our
no,
genes.
in our genes, because we have seen that there are studies certainly from concentration camp survivors, Second
Hmm.
World War, later on Yugoslavian Civil War. I think there were studies most recently from Syria, the Civil War, where now the offspring has shown epigenetic changes. Offspring, I sound like a bloody scientist in a crazy study. Humans that have been, that were born during those hard times and were essentially, or were born after those hard times, I have to say. So, Syria, Civil War, people fled. Now the children were born under much better circumstances, yet showed markers of increased inflammation, markers of increased damage epigenetically. That is amazing. So we see that. So trauma in its own right has a huge contributing factor, I believe, in the development of physical problems later in life. So children, most definitely, and there's things that we can't do much about. Um, Equally, children's health. There was a crazy study 20 years ago. Crazy in the sense of doctors wanted to finally show that taking the tonsils out is only money making for doctors. It has no real benefit for children. And suddenly they realized in those children, when they followed them up, that their IQ points raised by 10 points once you took their tonsils out, because they had chronic obstructive sleep apnea at night, they were tired, they were not functioning, etc. So we saw that suddenly children's health has actually a direct implication of later on in their development in their life. So you see already that there is a spider web of causes that are linking together. Some of them we can't do much about. And certainly when we talk about our children and maybe what we have undergone as children, there's not much we can do about that. But then there are all
And
these
you can,
modifiable things, isn't it?
yeah, and you can correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but my understanding as to one of the reasons why sleep apnea is a risk factor for increasing a person's risk to develop Alzheimer's disease is because it robs you. You stop breathing during your sleep cycle, and you don't benefit from going into the deepest sleep stage, REM sleep. And it's when we're in REM, the deepest sleep stage, that our brains are like washing machines and they're cleansing out the toxins
Beautiful.
that built up every
Beautiful.
day.
Yeah.
So we don't benefit from that process. And that's why a lot of people who
Mhm.
do live with sleep apnea, a lot of people might not be aware that they live with it
Absolutely.
and therefore go untreated. They're not benefiting from the CPAP machine that'll help them get into the REM deep stage sleep.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people have shown that they are much more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than
Absolutely.
people who are getting quality
Yeah.
sleep. Is that a statement that you agree with?
It's beautifully said. It's a deep stages of sleep. It's actually the non-REM is the deep sleep, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how we label them. It's the sleep architecture because every night we are going through 2, 3, 4 stages of really deep sleep. And then towards more the morning hours, we've got this kind of rapid eye movement sleep where we sort of work with the memory and where we work with other parts of our brain. And it's those deeper stages where the magic happens. There's a
Yes.
glymphatic system. Now, what you're referring to, glymphatic, is really the trash removal system of our brain. And it's a bit like
Yes.
you
Yes.
going to the toilet, the plugged toilet, and you use something that just so you increase the pressures on the toilet to somehow get the shit down. Well, that's actually the same in the brain. Our brain contracts and moves and doing that, and it's beautiful. It's actually a really cleansing system, which we need. Now, if you're not having, and that cleansing system, that rubbish removal system, that is really happening in the deep sleeps, deep stages. And often enough, we don't get to that. Why? Because we haven't got a good circadian rhythm. We don't have a good sleep hygiene. We go to bed late. We are triggering us even at 1 o'clock in the morning with our blue screens. We have maybe eaten late at night and even worse, sugary crap late at night. All that is impacting dramatically, even if you're not
We're not
obese.
dreaming.
That's right. Well, it's all that is changing. Your sleep architecture is changing. So
Yeah.
you can do in daily life, you can do a lot to have a really bad sleep. And that and obstructive sleep apnea is just another nail in the coffin, quite literally. Because once you come to the point that you might actually benefit from from a CPAP machine, my goodness, by that time your mortality, the chance of you dying within the next 5, 7 years, has gone up about 40, 50%, something like that. Every
Right.
night, someone is crawling into your bed and is strangling you and trying to kill you. In this case, it's just your own weight and it's your own anatomy here. And I say weight because 90% of OSA, obstructive sleep apnea, is weight related. There are 10% who have got anatomical changes. So not everyone who has OSA is a big person. Granted. But having said that, with our pandemic of obesity and metabolic disturbance, you see again how it all interacts, intertwines to cause the perfect storm. And at the end
That's
result,
right.
you look at the end result of dementia. Oh, how could I possibly have ended up like that? We have just explained to you the multitude of reasons that worked together. And I think this is a powerful privilege to know that. This is that so many things are your choice. You can't change your ApoE4 status, but you can very much change maybe how what happens to your children. Maybe there are ways that we can act earlier, that we look at their allergies. Why do they have allergies? Maybe introduce diets that are less inflammatory, etc. Do that at an early stage for the children, and therefore modify already one of the early so-called well, those things that we took for granted we can't do anything about, but maybe we can for the next generation. So there is so much more. But then we talked about all the lifestyle choices, the sleep, the hydration, the food. There is so much evidence coming out there that indeed a certain style of food plan is beneficial. We all probably by now have heard about the Mediterranean food plan. whole foods that are eaten in a least processed form, that are having the right amount of essential amino acids, the essential fatty acids, and low amount of carbohydrates. And that's sort of
Correct.
the Mediterranean food plan. So accepted for that. And everyone says, yeah, okay, cool. Most people don't have it. Most people don't use it. Okay, so start off with that. What people also don't realize is that in the Mediterranean lifestyle, that you don't eat 3, 4, or 5 meals a day. That there is actually fasting as part of your daily life. And guess what? What is the name of the first food that you take in the morning or after a period? It's breakfast, but you pronounce it wrong. It's break fast. Break fast is really what it should be. And so, therefore, a fasting of 14, 16 hours a day, or maybe if you know what you're doing or under medical supervision, prolonged fasting periods are incredibly healthy. And we know that a certain ketosis state is helping our brain to work. So again, it's not just what we eat, but also when we eat, how often we eat it, and when don't we eat it. So again, this is a choice for you. You have choices. So many choices. Every single time you open your mouth to put something in there, you've got a choice. Every single time you say, oh, just one more Candy Crush game at 2 o'clock in the morning, you have got a choice. You've made that choice. So don't tell us, oh, I don't know where it all comes from. Unfortunately, we can do a lot of things. And we are here. I think, Lisa, your frustration, you must be boiling over with frustration that you see all those things that are remediable, that things that could be changed in a lifestyle, and therefore minimize the risk. If you were to rank it, if we were to think about low-hanging fruit, about people making changes in their lifestyle, what would you say are the low-hanging fruit?
To your point, everything that we're sharing with your listeners today is backed by science and studies, but it's only been in the last maybe 40 years that
Mm,
we are becoming aware of these things that can either increase our risk of brain disease or
mm,
hopefully lower our risk.
yeah.
But I would say, and all the things that we talked about that we can't change, those are already against us.
Mm,
So the low hanging fruit to me is exactly what you just emphasized. The low hanging fruit are the things that we have choices about,
mm,
that we can control and make conscious
mm,
decisions, because it can make a difference. Even if you do have risk factors that apply to you as an individual, and we can't change that. And we also can't change a lot of our environmental factors like toxins and,
mm,
air pollution and all those things. We can't really control that. So you got to factor those in.
mm,
But there are plenty of these risk factors that we can make um, intelligent and informed decisions about, that could actually mean the difference later on in life, to
absolutely.
living out, a full life free of brain disease and, losing yourself in one of these
Mm,
dementia states and not. So that to me is the low hanging fruit.
it's beautiful. Beautiful. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I want to touch also on the importance of our five senses, because ultimately there are further contributing factors. Later on in life, we know that the risk of signs and symptoms of dementia is going up with poor hearing, poor vision. So a hearing aid can actually be a life-saving intervention. And we never think about those things. We think about them as inconveniences, but they have been clearly been shown in studies to massively contribute to a rapid deterioration of an existing neurodegenerative problem, isn't it? Do you see that
I'm
as
kind of wondering, I can't help wondering how many of these things that we have brought to the surface today, and people's reaction going, I had no idea
mm,
that poor sleep could
mm,
increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease or
absolutely.
hearing loss, or these are all science-based facts that have
Mm,
been
mm,
substantiated. But
absolutely.
it's pretty recent information, and I'm
Mm,
not saying yet from yesterday, but in the last, what would you
mm.
say, 30, 40 years maybe?
Oh, ah, no, see, you're giving a lot of credit to the medical profession.
Maybe,
Thank
maybe.
you, thank you. No, call that 5 or 10 years. Whilst the
Oh
studies might have been,
gosh.
whilst the studies might have been out there, who the hell is listening to them? Or is reading
Well,
them?
that's
Okay,
true.
so your typical GP, there should be there are about 6,000 publications, journal articles that a GP should read every month in order to stay really abreast of things.
That was a
Which
full-time job to keep up with all this stuff.
I know, and inevitably, you will focus on something that is your interest, because
Yeah.
otherwise, my God, you can't be an absolute expert in everything. And that's what we see. I've recently, my old GP has retired, and he was a really more holistic man. I love it. My new GP, she is a clear disease model GP. She's very thorough, she's very good. There's the right mixture of quotation mark holistic and listening to the patient. It was actually in the disease model the perfect GP consultation that I had with her as a first meeting. Yet I left frustrated because it's clearly the disease model. It's not
Yeah.
the prevention model. It's not a holistic health model. It's not a longevity model where we say, okay, how can we optimize the systems? We have been given this sports car as a body and this sports car as a brain, and no one has ever told us about maintenance. And here we are racing through town 220 miles an hour every day, all day long, 16, 18 hours a day. And then we are wondering why the wheels are coming off or why the engine light's coming on. No, we have not filled up the oil. We are not looking after the water. We are not changing the tires at times. And guess
That's
what?
a great analogy.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
You don't put oil in your engine, what's going to happen? The engine's going to blow up, right?
Exactly. That's
Eventually.
that's exactly what we do. That is humanity in a nutshell. And unfortunately, the disease model is only fueling that kind of thinking, whilst a functional medicine model, or indeed a preventative model, such as what you're doing. I mean, you come from a care. How can we optimize the care for those people there? So you are still part of the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, but you in the field of Alzheimer's, we at least have identified more and more how valuable a fence was up there, and we're putting the evidence out there that okay, if we put a piece of wood there, a piece of wood there, a piece of wood there, it's far less likely that you come off the cliff. And so I think that is the beautiful thing. We have got these options that we can do nowadays. Now, from a functional medicine point of view, I also think of several. Sorry, oh, there's so many things I want to discuss with you. I'm so excited. The, when it comes to optimizing the metabolic chaos within us, there are many nutraceuticals. There are many kind of vitamins, micronutrients, etc., that might be of benefit. There are certain adaptogens that might be really good to address oxidative stress, that might be good to address maybe our parasympathetic and sympathetic balance within us. What do you see in reality? Do you think that these things have a value based upon your practical experience right now in the United States, working with dementia sufferers and with systems that are caring for them?
You know, it's not my area of extensive knowledge as far as nutraceuticals go. Um, I I'm kind of on the fence about them because I haven't done enough research or seen enough results in people
Oh.
that
Wha-
really would position me to say, oh yeah, if
Mm,
you're on the right combination of
mm,
nutraceuticals and blah 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 blah, then you can, it'll
mm.
make a huge difference. You can reverse this blah blah
Yep.
blah. I
Yep.
I don't have enough um I haven't seen enough results to substantiate that,
I love
but
that.
it's again, it's not my area of really extensive knowledge because I don't really
A very
see a lot
humble,
of people that are.
please. Sure. I mean, that's, God, you let me pick that apart because, first of all, what a beautiful, humble answer and a very true answer. Here you are dealing with it the whole day long. You're seeing these people, yet you don't see results. Now, you have to ask yourself, hang on, what are these people actually doing? Who is guiding them? What kind of baseline testing has been done? As a functional medicine doctor, I'm not just throwing things at people because I think, yeah, you could do with some vitamin D. And yeah, maybe, I don't know, because I feel like it, you had tried that. That's a BS approach. No. Why don't we do some testing and actually see, hang on, okay, your gut is in tatters. Your thyroid is not working. Your hormone system is all over the show. Okay, so we've got five, six different brush fires within your body that really needs to be taken care of. So, what do we know? What is the evidence to actually work, let's say, on a particular problem, let's say inflammation? Are there things that we can add in? And what lifestyle have you lived? I mean, where are we at? So, bottom line is the vast majority of people are vitamin D deficient. Yet, so if you don't check that out, hypothyroidism, so low functioning thyroid hormones.
Hyperthyroidism can actually bring on and mirror the symptoms of dementia
Absolutely.
and put people in a state of what's called mild cognitive impairment. But if it is
Absolutely.
due to the root problem being a thyroid condition or a urinary tract infection, it can be
Absolutely.
treated and reversed.
Absolutely.
If the root cause of your symptoms are actually one of these brain diseases that we've been discussing, it's progressive.
Mm,
And that's the big difference.
mm.
And I agree with what you're saying because too many people will just go and, cruise the vitamin aisle and go, oh, I can probably benefit from this and
Absolutely.
this and this. And they don't
Absolutely.
have a
No.
clue what these things do.
Thank
You
you.
have to
Mm,
be assessed by a
absolutely.
professional who is going to address whatever the condition is that applies to you.
Exactly.
No, it's not a one size fits all situation.
Perfect. Perfect. And I think that's, yeah. Let me stay for a moment in there. There are a myriad of processes happening at every moment in your body at cellular level. Many of these processes need a number of cofactors. So there could be vitamins, could be the micronutrients such as selenium, zinc. It can be a number of other factors that are really needed. Yet, with our modern lifestyle, we often don't have these micronutrients that are necessary for your cells to function properly. So in New Zealand, for example, our soil is depleted of zinc and selenium. So most people are running around low in that. Most people are running around low in vitamin D just because our lifestyle has changed. Many people have got low thyroid function, which is contributed by a low iodine intake. So you've got all these kind of little things. If we're just separating things out into, let's give the body actually just what it needs. So a well thought through multivitamin, and I say multivitamin, I hate that word. Kind of a series of products or one product that has those things in that you need, those micronutrients, etc., for optimal functioning. That is one thing. Everyone should be on that. Everyone should at least they do courses of that. Maybe 2 months, a year. I'm now boosting up putting things onto the shelves into my storage units in my cells, so that when they need to do that protein or that function, that they have it. So there is that group. Then there's the other group over there we call adaptogens. We call those a number of different hormones, peptides, etc., where we hope that we can boost epigenetics, where we can boost the function of cells, where we can optimize things. And that's, for example, we know that many of the problems that we see in medicine are mitochondrial diseases. Mitochondria are these little powerhouses within the cells. And they are hammered by toxins, they are hammered by lifestyle, they are hammered by everything. So they're not doing their job. They can't do their job because either they don't have the materials to work with or they are just impaired by life. Now, we can foster care, and that is where the lifestyle comes in. That's where then maybe additional therapies come in, such as red light therapy, photobiomodulation, where maybe the I'm going a bit extreme now, the ice baths, the sauna lifestyle, those kind of things. I mean,
Cryotherapy,
yeah, exactly. So there are a number of things out there that can actually directly strengthen that. So you could say this is really alternative health, but this is actually functional health. This is you putting actually the oil back into your car and actually filling up the water. So I think I would like to separate those things. I think those over here fill up your resources. It's a must. End of the story. Work with adaptogens. Like you, it's very hard to say, okay, if I now use lion's mane in the morning and turkey tail mushrooms in the evening, will that make a measurable difference? Measurable? Defined as how? Which studies do you want to create where you say, well, that helps and that doesn't help, when you have got a bit of a lion's tail and turkey tail and lion's mane mushroom, and then you have got 12,600 chemicals that are flooding your body in the American lifestyle, as microplastics and mycotoxins, etc., etc. So hang on, how does that work? And now you make a few changes with your food and you live a little bit better there, and you actually made changes with more exercise and your sleep has improved. How do you want to tease out what contributed in those adaptogens? So I 100% agree with you when you say, actually, there are no studies out there and I'm sitting on the fence. It's the same with me, in all fairness. I see the potential benefits of
and it's going to differ. It's going to differ with everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's so hard. Let's be clear. There is no magic mushroom. Yes, there are. Okay, but different story. There are there are no magical cures. There is no tablet. Recently, a new study or a new research came out and said, yes, brilliant. We have found just another way how a new tablet that some weird name that can potentially help with Alzheimer's. We should celebrate. Bullshit. You cannot somehow give a magic at the end when all those things have gone wrong and you have not taken any action. And then you expect down there at the end, at the bottom of the cliff, that 2 tablets a day of something will make a magic cure? You really think that this is true? So let's think about that. And that's the same when you see Dr. AJ, who's got his nice herbal drink from India, who's made in the Himalayan mountains, and it's dried on the belly buttons of Greek virgins. And if you buy that for $200, it will detox your body. Your mitochondria will live alive, and you're gonna be 150 and still have a sex life. Yeah, about that. Okay. So let's be very clear. Both alternative snake oil charmers, snake oil salesmen are there, and unfortunately, too many of my medical colleagues are also snake oil salesmen, because we believe in the medical model. We hope that one day there will be the one cure being found for something that is really contributed by so many factors, both non-negotiable ones like ApoE4, genetic predisposition, as we said, and a lot of negotiable and modifiable risk factors. So Okay, that was me going on. I'm stepping off my soapbox now. Um, I think, would you agree with the letter? Would you agree that there are so many people who try to make money out of the suffering from people with dementia or dementia-like problems?
There's no question in my mind. The answer is yes, of course. I mean, I think that's pretty standard, and just our culture is we try to see how we can profit from anything that's going on. But yeah, in the dementia world, definitely.
How can we distinguish between some true new breakthroughs in medicine or allied health and things that are potentially beneficial? We just don't have the evidence yet or the studies, but there might actually be something. And true snake oil that is being sold to us under very dubious circumstances. How can we distinguish from these three groups?
That's probably one of the most important questions to discuss, because in my own experience, and this is one of the problems that I have, and other people do too, because so many people have expressed to me, have confided in me that they don't know what to believe. They don't know who to believe. There's so much misinformation. There's so much
Absolutely.
disinformation, and it changes on a dime.
Mhm.
And I spend an insurmountable amount of time trying to stay up on um, verifiable research that I can make sure I am sharing accurately with people,
Exactly.
because there's just so much um, untruth out there, and people, it's just too confusing. You just don't know what you can believe and what you can't believe. And then if something does, Alzheimer's disease is part of mainstream media finally. It hasn't been it's only been that way pretty much since post-COVID. Before, nobody wanted to talk about any of these things, even though maybe the studies were done 40 years ago. They haven't been talked about 40 years ago. And that, I think we both know, is the absolute truth. And it's the same with, this information that is out there that, okay, well, that sounds like it might help my dad um, reverse his dementia. So let's try it. But how do you know? How do you know that you can trust what you're hearing? And and that's one of the problems that I have with what I do, is because there is so much mis and disinformation out
Absolutely.
there.
And it's
Yeah.
so the reason I'm asking that 6, 7 days ago, the New York Times, a reporter, looked into the Alzheimer's, and their heading here, I'm reading it directly: an expensive Alzheimer's lifestyle plan offers false hope, experts say. That's the heading, and that is basically the journalist then goes through a very poor research on the work of Dale Bredesen, and of his recommended plan that essentially we have outlined here. And he has just more popularized it. He has written a book in 2017 to actually outline his findings, and the article goes into depth to say how bad it all is, that there is no evidence for it, that, oh wow, this poor person has now to take 34 capsules and tablets along with 2 scoops of powder. What a challenge for their life, and so on and so on. They found one person whose disease actually worsened despite all the good attempts of changing things. And they said, wow, we have spent $1,000 a month or something like that. And, it's costly and it doesn't do a thing. Based upon the opinion of one person, They did not challenge it and did not say anything about recommendations of dementia societies, which we have discussed today. They did not bring on Dale Bredesen to actually hear his opinion. It's the divided states of America, which is now coming towards a quite a reputable newspaper like the New York Times. I always thought, I mean, for Christ's sake, wasn't it the New York Times that broke the Watergate? And it's there. Once upon a time, we were able to believe in mainstream media, and especially the big names. Nowadays, I am incredibly disappointed in this particular case. Just the sheer fact what a rubbish journalism it was. Leave regret. Leave alone. I'm not saying that a popularized protocol such as Dale Bredesen is the be all end all, but it gives us a structured way how to approach those many modifiable lifestyle choices. So I think if we look at it from what can we actually do about signs and symptoms of dementia, we can try to prevent it. We can try to treat the underlying root causes, and we then can manage the symptoms. And maybe, just maybe, we can, in some patients, we can actually do tremendous reversals on the early stages or prevent further deterioration down the line. So if we
Well,
take,
herein lies part of the problem.
such
As of this conversation today, we still do not know exactly 100% what causes Alzheimer's disease and some of
touche.
the other brain
Oh,
diseases.
very nice. Yes, yes, you're
How
right.
many years have we been hearing about plaques and tangles?
Absolutely.
But now there's a theory that, yeah, some people that live with Alzheimer's disease do have plaques and tangles in their brains, others don't,
Exactly.
but they still show the signs of dementia. But
Exactly.
now, and we've talked about a lot of these theories today, inflammation, gut health, lifestyle factors, environmental factors, and we don't know the actual cause, but it could be multiple factors that, and it could be that if I develop Alzheimer's disease, maybe this contributed to me developing it, but somebody else, it could have been a different reason. And
Absolutely.
therein lies the true problem is you have all this, what you refer to as the BS, because we don't know. So you have a lot of these people that are, throwing out conjecture and this study and that study, but
Absolutely.
nobody really knows. And that's
Exactly.
why we are in this quandary, is because it's still unknown. We haven't been able to pinpoint the actual true
Exactly.
causes of it.
Exactly. And I think that's we have raised so many concerns and questions. So often enough, people who after listening to such a conversation like us, think, "Oh God, my head hurts." Well, where do I start? Nothing.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely normal. If you don't go away after this discussion with a lot of questions, then I don't want to know. Then you didn't listen enough. Okay. So if you're confused, I congratulate you, because that has pushed you further out of your comfort zone. And you're saying, okay, I'm confused, but I'm also curious. I want to know more. So hang on. Lisa said something about, and Stefan said something about. So maybe this is where you start to pull on this spider web. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And suddenly, sooner or later, that spider web of dementia signs and symptoms starts breaking down, because you have actually changed something here, changed something there, and then very quickly things change. It's impossible not to get better, not to improve in your whole human being if you do a structured approach. Okay, so if you actually were to look at the absolute foundation of resilience, of being the best version of yourself, the sleep, the hydration, the nutrition, the mental awareness and mindfulness of the impacts of stress, and maybe you taking on things that might be altering that. The moment you start doing that, you're already changing the world, but you're changing it within yourself. And that is so powerful. So I think we all have got those choices. And then we can see, okay, what else is there? And then where it's probably in my mind where the functional testing comes in, where you actually want to see, okay, hang on. So if we accept that probably my lifestyle hasn't been so conducive to living a long age, okay, what's the damage? So you might look at a disease model already. That's where your GP might be a financially logical start because they will run the usual kind of tests within the medical world and might be able to give you answers. And HbA1c tells you very quickly, okay, you have got diabetes, my friend, or you're pre-diabetic. Well, you've got one answer. Cool. Next step then is the functional testing. Let's actually see what are your hormones like. What is that? And that's where you need a functional medicine practitioner. That could be a nutritionist trained in that. In my case, a doctor trained in that thing. So you look at those kind of lifestyle factors and etc. Where are we at? Let's get a snapshot where we are at. Let's do some genetic testing. Are you ApoE4 positive? If so, maybe time for us to pay a bit of attention, more attention than you would maybe otherwise have done. So
Right.
that's where the testing comes in. Then start implementing those things. If we know that sedentary lifestyle is the new smoking, if we know that you doing 1,000, 2,000 steps a day and sitting most of the time around stressed, well, that as a health impact is the same if you smoke a pack a day. So if we know that, and the fact is there, this is not me talking rubbish, we have got the studies, then okay, how can we do exercise snacks for you every day? How can we do, I mean, after our show, I will get up, I will do 20 bodyweight squats, I will do leaning push-ups, and that is just me getting up and, doing something. I will have raised my heart rate, my muscles open up, glucose transporters are getting, oh, cool, 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 cool. Bring me some stuff into there. We don't need to put it into fat. We just put it into there. I will make the right choices. I will have a protein-rich breakfast, shall I say, a protein-rich breakfast, and I will set myself up. These are all simple things we can do. There is one more thing I wanted to touch upon, really. There is so much. I mean, we all live on our phones. And if I go onto my phone and swipe, and sooner or later I get an advertisement about brain games. Because clearly, I do like to challenge my brain. So I'm actually interested in brain games. I like to, obviously research the neurodegenerative diseases. So therefore, constantly I'm in this funnel, advertising funnel of the new game that will make your IQ go up, etc. How much do games play a role in the care of the dementia patients or clients?
Anything that compels us to use our critical thinking skills
Mm.
will benefit cognitive stimulation.
Mhm.
The number one thing that is recommended that we can do to stimulate our brain is to learn a foreign language. And the
Nice.
reason why is because the parts of the brain that we have to use to translate one language to another and back and forth is really making our brain work. And then learning a musical instrument is also a highly recommended thing. Taking classes,
Absolutely.
doing Sudoku and crossword puzzles is better than not doing anything.
Good.
But the harder our brains have to work and use our critical thinking skills, the more stimulation our brains will benefit from and reduce our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's a very good balanced answer. I love what you said. Personally, I think neuroplasticity is something that we can
Yes.
train. So neuroplasticity, for those of you who think, what the hell is he talking about? Neuroplasticity. When I began studies, so in the 80s, studied medicine, we were told that you get born with a brain and then from then on your brain dies. That was our medical thinking then. That's so not true. Our brain can regenerate to a certain degree. At that time, we were thinking about the neurons, so the brain cells in their own right, as the thing, and all these glia cells and those kind of things that they're just helping to keep the neurons in place. Rubbish. Nowadays, we have learned that there is such a powerful interaction of various cells within the brain, and they all play a role. And we can strengthen those roles by giving them, for example, the right micronutrients, the right stuff they need to actually work. We can strengthen them by giving them the right fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids. Our brain is fat. We also now know that we can very much damage it, because what are most of those chemicals that are seeping into our body? Well, they are fat soluble. They go into our brain with microplastics. The recent studies show that there's a significant accumulation of microplastics in our brain. Well, guess what they do? They mess around with you. So if we accept that, actually, hang on, this is a far more living organ than rather this kind of thing that we thought it was 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago even. So what can we do about it? Now we can stimulate that growth, stimulate that turnover. For example, you're brushing your teeth with your right hand. You've done that for the last 30, 40, 50 years. Mix it up. Why not? Tonight, start brushing your teeth with your left hand. You're going to have that toothbrush up your nose. You're going to have it in your ear. You're going to have it anywhere, but certainly not on your teeth when you start off with. Talk about training your body to do something new. So just simply switch sides in whatever you do and see how your body has to work with that.
Well, the other thing that happens is all these things that we're talking about that are cognitively stimulating, it also creates what's called cognitive reserve,
Exactly.
which protects your
Exactly.
memory and your brain function as you age, and doesn't die, as you say. You're born with a brain and then it
Exactly.
dies. It
Exactly.
actually protects your brain from that happening, right?
Exactly. I love that. Absolutely love that. What we have not paid attention to equally, I mean, when I was saying the switching over the toothbrush from right to left, I mean, that's certainly beautiful neuroplasticity training. But if we think about what is our body really designed to do, it's designed to move us through a three-dimensional space. And unfortunately, so many of us do not pay attention to that. We do not build up the muscle that controls the power that we have got. We do not build up or train the proprioception, the way that we feel where we are within a three-dimensional space. We do not train flexibility of our body. We become stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. Yet all these kind of things play together. So if you have got a poor functioning body because literally you neglected to do anything physical, you're so on the back foot, and it's much easier for you to trip and break your femur, your fractured neck of femur, is often a death sentence in the elderly. And so by us actually encouraging you to go out there and within your limits, start expanding your horizon to actually add in the exercise snacks or activity snacks I've been talking about. Make it a point of every hour or so, get up, do some steps, do a little bit here or there. If you go shopping, don't park immediately in the handicapped space in front of the door. Maybe, if it is safe to do so, park 100 meters away. And now you have to walk those extra 100 steps or so, or 200 steps that makes you, to get to that. So there are little things that you can do each and every day where suddenly you get stronger. You build up confidence. You build up a resilience. I love the thought of reserve that you just put into my mind. It's the same with your body. So you're actually training yourself again just as much as when you were a toddler and you were training how to actually crawl, how to knee, how to stand, and then walk. Now, you did that when you were young, and no one ever said, "Oh my God, look at her. She fell down again. Stop walking. That's it. Forget it. No more walking for you. You failed 10 times in walking. No more walking for you, okay?" Yet we accept the same thing with age. Oh no, you're just getting older. It's okay. BS! Go out there, live your life to the fullest. If you're thinking Mediterranean lifestyle, if we talk Mediterranean food plan, well, really, if you look at centenarians, people who live up to 100, yes, they eat the Mediterranean food plan, but they also live in a setting where there's community, where it's normal to move. There's, yes, you have got this beautiful food, but then thereafter you get off your ass and you go for a walk along the Ramblas in Barcelona. Or so you go for a walk as a family afterwards. That's normal. You have fasted in the morning. That's normal. So there's so much more. Don't think about the food as a quick fix. It's food is medicine, yes, but food is part of medicine. There's so much more. I think our movements need to be added in there. And if you then add community, for example, you join a walking club, or you join another club that learns to play the ukulele. Okay, you have no idea how to play the ukulele. Who cares? You have fun. Trust me, you will have fun. You will make a fool out of yourself, and it's going to be amazing. You, as a young person, you loved to juggle. Maybe you were quite good naturally in juggling. Why not join somewhere a course? How to learn more juggling skills? What better dexterity can you develop there? What new skill, what new balance, what new power do you put in there whilst you're laughing and whilst you're having fun? Combine these things. Put a new purpose in your life. And the moment this becomes your new mission, you suddenly are bound to live your life in a much fuller way that is very much protective against diseases such as Alzheimer's, and that ultimately allows you to leave a legacy. Your legacy is not that of, oh, look at her, how she ended up there in the nursing home. No, people will say on your deathbed celebration, they will say, wow, look at her. She really kicked ass. There were all these challenges, and here you are, seeing her at the age of 70 juggling balls. That would be something I would put into my eulogy. Okay, so it's sometimes really good to think ahead and think, what is my future? And
Yeah.
you're the author of that future. So,
Yes.
oh, wow, I'm got a bit emotional there. It's just we both have lived our life in certain ways. Some of them we are proud of, some of them we regret. But it's the past. The past does not equal the future. And so, therefore, I strongly believe that you and I, based upon what we have discussed today, we are better human beings after this show, after our discussion,
No question.
because we have connected, we have felt a passion that maybe sometimes is a bit dormant, and it's so powerful. So, guys out there, what steps can you take to refine yourself, refine that purpose, maybe define a new purpose, define a new life, see what holds you back, and see what you can do to maybe mitigate those factors and change those factors. I think you did an amazing job here by listening to us rabbiting on in our passion. Lisa, if people want to know more about you and want to find you, where can they find you?
Well, my website is mindingdementia.com.
Mm,
And I also have a Facebook page that you can access in
mm,
Facebook by typing in Lisa Skinner author.
mm.
And I'm on LinkedIn. You can type in my name and I'm all over the internet. So
Beautiful, beautiful.
hopefully I'll be a
Mm,
valuable resource for
yeah,
people
yeah,
who find
yeah.
themselves in this situation.
And in fact, if you wanted to just sit back for a moment and think, wow, there were so many things she touched upon and he touched upon. Maybe I can look that more up. You have written a book. Tell us
I've
about your
written
book.
several books.
Go for it. What books are they?
I've actually written 3 books now, 2 of them bestsellers, award winner. And I have a training program out there to guide families through this whole journey and
Beautiful.
with as less the least amount of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
So all of these things you can find on my website or on
Guys,
LinkedIn.
look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. All of Lisa's details are there. I often say, what have you got to lose? In this case, I want to say, what have you got to gain when you go down there? The reason that you've listened to this whole thing is that either you or someone you love is affected by that, or that there's a fear that you could be the next because maybe there's a family history. I think in all of these cases, the key thing is to be armed with knowledge, armed with resources that you can tap in now or maybe in the future. It is so important to realize that so many doctors and so many people out there don't really know too much about what we have been talking about today. And things are constantly changing. Had we done this interview a year ago, I would have said, well, wouldn't it be nice if there was a blood test that could confirm the presence of Alzheimer's? Now, today, as we are recording that on June 2025, we have got a blood test. So p-tau
It was
217.
just approved.
Correct.
It
p-tau
was just
217.
approved.
My point.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing this blood test or the availability here to New Zealand. Unfortunately, it is a two-tier medicine system. You have to pay for it, and it's not cheap to actually get that test taken, the blood taken, spun down, frozen to minus 60 degrees, sent to the United States. The price is eye-watering. At the same token, if you're suffering from a disease and you're not sure, is that actually Alzheimer's, yes or no? We now have got a blood test that's highly specific for Alzheimer's. If you add in GFAP and another blood test, then you can also see how active other neurodegenerative diseases are within your brain. So we have got these opportunities nowadays. And with that, I want to say, don't just take no for an answer, or, hey, this is just you getting older, or whatever kind of rubbish you're being told, where people disarm you, where people disempower you. I want you to be empowered. I want you to know that the past does not equal the future, and that whatever challenge there is ahead, there is a lot of information out there that might be highly, highly applicable to you, and with which you can turn back time. Who says you can't live to 100? And with that, I don't mean the next 40 years live in a nursing home. I mean you going dancing when you're 80, you learning Argentinian tango when you're 90. I don't care. Who says you cannot live the life that you would deserve to live? And I strongly advocate for all of us to make the most out of our situation. And you will be amazed where you will end up if you take that, if you incorporate that sense of curiosity and a willingness to learn. More importantly, the willingness to take action. It's all quite pretty to listen to us here rabbiting on, but if you then don't take action, yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yes, that's it. You're destined for what you're destined. If you take action and change things, then wow, miracles will happen. Lisa, you're amazing. Love you. This was an amazing talk, amazing
Really
interview.
was. Yeah, I think we could go on and on and on
I know,
and on and on.
isn't it?
All good things must come to an end.
Oh,
Right?
hell yes. But Lisa, if there's one thing that you would have loved to know as a younger woman, if you could, if I lent you my time machine and you can go back in your own lifetime to a younger version of yourself, what message would you send that younger person?
I would say, look at life as a gift. There are so many gifts staring us right in the face.
Oh, yeah.
And all we have to do is grab them and use each one of them as a stepping stone into a happier, healthier life. And I wish I'd realized that 40 years ago. I realize it now, but I'm getting up there in years myself, and I don't have as much time left as I did 40 years ago, but that's one lesson that I think very, very important lesson that I have learned is there's just so many gifts staring us right in the face that we don't even, either recognize or take advantage of and use to help us continue to create a happy, healthy, meaningful life that we're all entitled to.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. You guys out
Thanks
there,
again for having me.
oh hell yes. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention.